State Rep, and I look forward to working with you. You were one of the first state reps that embraced me once I won. And of course, keep sharing all the compliments to me and my staff, because essentially what we want to do here is we want to make sure that all your constituents understand what my office does and how important it is for your protection of your generational wealth. And just, we want you to understand that we are open by appointment only, but we are here to serve you. And I want to go over some things, but I just wanted to say thank you for having me.
Well, Madam Register, thank you for the opportunity to reach out to all of our constituency, to inform our communities of what your office does and the importance of registering your wills, registering your documentation for your real estate, and any other several other legal documents that your office is responsible for. On behalf of the citizens of the 197th Legislative District, thank you. I just literally walked in the door. I spent the day working in central Pennsylvania, working with my Republican colleague Barbara Glean, and we're assisting our farmers and to be able to do agritourism in a safely manner and help diversify the services that farmers offer our communities. To me, it's particularly important to educate our community, particularly in the 197th, where we have so many tangled titles, where we have so many families that have lost a loved one and do not know what to do, whether they require a lawyer or not. This is the first great step, is to just ask the Register of Wills office. And by your office being so accessible and so, even with the pandemic, being willing to work through appointments, is just letting our community know that the Register of Wills office is extremely accessible and ready to inform and educate our communities.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all your service. And I want your constituents to know the seriousness of what's happening here in Philadelphia. We are in a crisis, of course, with the COVID. And fortunately for me and my staff, we did not close. We had to close. We did everything virtually. And then now we are open on appointment. You got to make an appointment to come in and, of course, have your mask. I want you all to understand what the Register Wills office is. We are the state agency under the 1st Judicial District of Pennsylvania. Our sole mission is to preside over the protection of generational wealth.
Okay, let me
Although we are here in the city, we are a state office.
Let me translate that part, Madam Chair, Madam Register. La Oficina de Registros Civiles es una oficina que es orientada por el Estado. Es una oficina en donde se registran documentaciones legales, ya como títulos, ya como testamentos, y también todo lo que tenga que ver con sus registros de boda, de casamientos.
Hey, this is history, guys. We are actually doing this in 2 languages. Espanol. How do you say hello to your Spanish audience? Please help me.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches, I knew that. Buenas noches, good evening. So some of the things that we do that you may not even know that we do is when you need to validate a will. If somebody dies and they have a will, or if they don't have a will, you have to come to room 180 in City Hall.
Una de las cosas que usted necesita saber es que el Salón 180 es donde usted registra los testamentos o cualquier documento legal del Estado.
We also collect inheritance and estate taxes. So any taxes after you probate your will that you owe to the state, you have to come to our office and bring the check to our office, and we process estate and inheritance tax.
Cualquier impuesto, cuando se solicita lo que es conocido como el probate tax, que es impuesto sobre una herencia, todo ese trámite se hace en la oficina en el salón 180.
We probate estates, meaning when you bring the will to us, there's a process called probating. And that is the process of bringing in all the necessary paperwork that you need in order for you to be able to obtain or get your generational wealth from your deceased relative or whoever.
La legalización de testamentos es el proceso que indica cuáles son los impuestos que debe de pagar los bienes del fallecido.
Without having to go in real detail, but you should know these terms, we assign executive privileges. In other words, I make the decision of who is going to be the executive over the estate if you don't have a will, and I also can assign an attorney to the to process to preside over the estate.
El despacho de Madam Register se encarga de nombrar quién va a ser el ejecutor del testamento, se encarga de elegir si el testamento necesita ver un abogado o si los bienes de la persona fallecida tienen que pasar a ser supervisados por un abogado.
I also issue short certificates, which will enable you to go to banks or to wherever the assets is. This certificate enables you to go and get the assets after you probate.
También la oficina de registros civiles, de Register of Wills, emite lo que es conocido como certificado de primera instancia, en el cual le permite iniciar los trámites de transición del fallecido de acuerdo al testamento, si hay un testamento.
Sharon, is there anything else on the short certificate that they should know?
Only that in order to obtain some assets immediately, you need to get a short certificate.
I said that in Spanish.
Okay, good.
Okay.
One of the things that hardly anyone knows, we also preserve and protect records and archives. Records like marriage, we have records that go back to the 1600s.
También mi oficina es responsable de guardar archivos. Desde el 1600 estamos guardando archivos como documento de boda, and death certificates also, right, Madam Chair?
Yeah,
Madam
not death certificate.
no.
No.
Okay, solamente registros de boda.
So records, the Register of Wills office has been around for a long time, since the 1600s, way before the Revolutionary War. That's how important that office is in Philadelphia, PA. That's how long the Register of Wills has been around.
La oficina ha estado sirviéndole a la comunidad desde el 1600. Es una oficina donde obtienen y guardan información prudente de todas las familias que viven en Pensilvania y registros legales de propiedades, de bienes y raíces.
We also set public policy, and one of the policies that I've already have begun to implement is how we are going to address the tangled title crisis, and we'll get to that later.
Otro proceso que la oficina de Madam Register ofrece es de cómo manejar los títulos que están envueltos, títulos que, por ejemplo, hay un fallecido y el hijo o un familiar quiere ser dueño de esa propiedad y no hay título. No hay testamento.
I'm also the clerk over the Orphans Court, which means I'm a judge over the Orphans Court.
También mi oficina está encargada de lo que es la corte de menores, de huérfanos.
So some of the services in the Orphans Court includes issuing and validating marriage licenses.
Uno de los servicios que ofrecemos en la Corte de Huérfanos es emitiendo las licencias de bodas que estén registradas.
So yes, you come to the Registry of Wills office to get married. That's my office is 414 in City Hall. That's the room number. So whenever you want to get married, you have to come to my office. That is part of the Registry of Wills.
Cuando desean casarse, tienen que venir al Salón 414 para pedir la licencia de boda, y mi oficina de registro de Wills se encarga de procesar la boda.
We also keep your marriage records. So if you lost your marriage certificate and you needed a copy, we have that record no matter, and we have them. Like if you got married 40 years ago, you could come to our office and get a copy of your marriage record or a copy of your family's record for your genealogy. So we serve sort of as like a genealogy of sorts. If you wanted to look up the history of marriage in your family, you could come to our office and request the record.
Si desea saber el récord de bodas en su familia, puede venir a mi oficina y pedir el récord. Does that have a price? Adam, register?
Yes, it does. It has a nominal fee, and Tasha will get that and put that up on the screen. Yes.
I believe it's $25 register.
Okay,
Hay un
$25.
Hay un costo para pedir el procesamiento de una copia de un registro de boda.
One of the things that I just wanted to mention before we go on to the next slide to explain to you what a will is and why it's important. When you have a death, and sometimes you want to get access to the deceased person bank account.
Cuando hay una muerte y usted desea obtener información sobre esa persona, sobre ese ser querido,
sometimes you will go to the bank and they will deny you and tell you you have to get a short certificate.
Alguna vez el banco le niega acceso a la información de su pariente o de la persona con la que usted convivía, y el banco le puede negar acceso. Entonces, la oficina de registro le emite una vez usted sea, that's once they're an executor, they can get a short.
No.
They can get it before.
You can access funds from the dead person bank account if it contains $10,000 or less.
Usted puede tener acceso si la cuenta es menor de $10,000.
So $10,000 in one, you got to get a short certificate. $10,000 or less, you can access this if you are the spouse, the child, the parent, or sibling without the need of a short certificate. So it is the spouse, child, parent, or sibling.
Tiene que ser un familiar inmediato, hijo, esposa, padre o hermano.
You also must provide a death certificate and a funeral bill.
También tienen que mostrar el certificado de defunción y el cobro de la funeraria.
The bank must give you those funds if you meet those requirements. And the reason why I put that as a predecessor to the will part is because a lot of times we don't have a lot of money when we die.
Por la razón que digo esto es porque muchas veces cuando la persona muere, los familiares no tienen mucho dinero para poder cubrir los costos de la funeraria.
And so one of the first things you probably want to do is want to see if that deceased person have any money in the bank.
Y una de las cosas que los familiares tratan de hacer es saber si la persona que falleció, si el familiar que falleció tenía dinero en el banco.
So what I just said is most times some of the bank tellers don't know, and they'll tell you to go get a short certificate and it's $7,000 in there, when really they supposed to turn the money over to you if you have all those requirements. And if that happens, call our office.
A veces los bancos le niegan acceso al familiar teniendo los requisitos de inmediato que son necesarios para comprobar que usted era familiar del fallecido. Si eso pasa, por favor, llamen a la oficina de registros de wills.
So what is a will?
¿Qué es un testamento?
So a will is a document you write during your lifetime that distributes your assets. So it's literally a physical document that you write and sign. And this document is a legal document that will let everyone know where you want your assets to go, what areas is good to get your assets.
¿Qué es un testamento? Un testamento es un documento que usted escribe y firma, en donde indica quién usted quiere que se encargue de sus bienes o a quién usted le está otorgando sus bienes una vez usted fallezca.
Your will is not effective until you die.
Su testamento no está vigente hasta que usted fallezca.
We at the Register of Wills, we do not store wills while you're alive. Many people come to us and say, well, where do I register my will? Well, in the state of Pennsylvania, we do not store wills. Other states have other rules, but in the state of Pennsylvania, we do not store. You do not come to us while you're alive and bring your will to us and say, here's my will.
En el estado de Pensilvania, el departamento de registro no se queda con su testamento. Usted no tiene que venir y presentarnos su testamento.
Once you make your will, you have to put it in a safe place, or you have to tell somebody where your will is, because if you die and you are the only one that knows where your will is, then your family will not be able to fulfill your final wishes. They will not be able to conduct the necessary business that they need to conduct without having to go through some other process.
Es importante que su testamento usted dé a conocer la localización a un familiar en caso de que usted fallezca, para que sus familiares sepan qué usted desea después de que usted fallezca, quién puede ser encargado de su bien, a quién usted le deja su bien.
So please, once you make the will, and you can also, if you don't get a lawyer, and I strongly suggest you get a lawyer.
Recomendamos que use un abogado. Es recomendado que use un abogado para poder hacer su testamento.
For now, because we're in COVID, you can actually take a piece of paper and write down and put all your assets and write to whoever you want it to go to and sign it. Do they have to have witnesses when they do that as well, Sharon?
In the state of Pennsylvania, you don't need a witness, but the best practice is always to get at least 2 witnesses for your will, because when it's time to probate your will, when it's time to take your will to City Hall, you have to locate the witnesses that actually signed your will. Unless you get them to sign it, get it notarized, and then you don't have to deal with that witness issue again.
Okay.
Right.
Es importante, no es mandatorio, pero es importante, es recomendado de que tenga un testigo, 2 testigos que firmen el testamento junto a su persona y que notaricen el documento.
A valid will in Pennsylvania must be signed by the creator of the will at the bottom. So if this is your will, you have to sign it at the bottom. And you must be at least 18 years old and of sound mind.
Su testamento debe de estar firmado por usted en la parte baja y un testigo mayor de 18 años con todas sus facultades mentales.
I just want to mention it's very important to sign it at the bottom, not in the middle. If you sign your will in the middle, everything after your signature is invalid.
La razón por la cual se le pide al ciudadano de que firmen su testamento en la parte baja es que cualquier escritura que esté debajo de su firma es considerada inválida. Es muy importante que firmen el testamento en la parte baja.
And so with that, I always say, we're saying this for COVID. You can't get to a lawyer. You may not have any money. We will accept that will if you prepare it yourself and you very specific about who you want to have. She has my house. She can have all four of my children should share my pictures, because assets are anything of value that you think is of value. Houses, cars, pictures, stocks and bonds, and children are part of your assets.
En su testamento usted debe de incluir todo lo que sea de valor para usted. En caso de haber menores, quién se va a hacer cargo a los menores. En caso de que tenga propiedades, quién va a ser, a quién usted le otorga su propiedad.
As the Register of Wills, we do not make wills. So you can't come to our office to make a will. However, I strongly suggest that you go to an attorney for assistance with your will, or there are free agencies that do will clinics that will assist you. And State Representative has that list, and we will provide them.
Es recomendado que hagan su testamento con un abogado. La oficina de registro no hace los testamentos. El testamento tiene que hacerlo usted y es recomendado que lo haga con un abogado. Hay también oficinas sin fines de lucros que ayudan a facilitar la producción de un testamento. También mi oficina y la oficina de registro le pueden facilitar esa lista si ustedes lo necesitan.
When you go to an attorney to have them assist you in creating your will, one of the things that you want to do is make sure it is a self-proven will. And Sharon will explain that to you a little better.
I'll be happy to, Register. Self-proving only means what we talked about earlier, about having the signatures notarized. Not only should you get your will witnessed by two people, but you should also get it notarized. Because if it's notarized,
let me translate.
I'm sorry. Yes, stop a little. Go ahead.
Es importante que que su testamento sea probado por sí mismo. Probado por sí mismo significa que está notarizado y que ha sido firmado por dos testigos.
So, I don't know if you explained this, you also need to get it notarized so that you don't have to find those witnesses at a later point.
Yes, I explained that part.
So they know that. So, this, I think is so critical for them to understand that when you go to this attorney, because some attorneys don't make them self-proven. In other words, when your heirs bring the will, or whoever your executor is, or whoever bring that will, if you make it self-proven, then those two witnesses, you don't have to go find those two witnesses to come. And it makes it a lot smoother, because you may make a will and it's 30 years old and they can't find the witnesses. Mm-hmm. And you know how people are. I don't have time, and you want to, make sure that, so make sure your will is a self-proven will, and make sure it's notarized. at the
Es
bottom.
muy importante que el testamento sea aprobado por sí mismo. Y de la manera que se hace es que esté firmado por 2 testigos y que esté notarizado.
A will is a critical asset to protect your wealth. You protect your wealth. You decide who you want your assets to go to. Do not allow the state to decide, because the state, if you don't have a will, then there's a whole nother process called intestate, where the state law of Pennsylvania will makes the decision on how your assets will be distributed.
Si usted fallece y no tiene un testamento, el Estado se hace cargo de sus bienes y decide a quién le va a otorgar sus bienes y sus cosas de valores.
Also, which is very important, and I know it's very important because a lot of times we don't want to make wills because we don't want to make decisions, and we might think, if I make a will, I'm going to die.
A veces pensamos que si hago un testamento me voy a morir.
Everybody's going to die.
Todos nosotros vamos a morir algún día.
You want to make the will so you can alleviate or lessen the confusion, because as the registrar of wills, you should see how families are torn apart simply because a will was not left in place.
Se han visto casos que los familiares pelean por los bienes que quedan porque no hay un testamento. Es recomendado que haya un testamento en caso para evitar problemas entre familiares en el futuro.
So you may be wondering, and we said this, but I'm gonna repeat it again. You may be wondering where your loved ones will. We get phone calls all the time when people die, and they'll call us asking us, do you have my mom or dad will? Did she register it? Again, the will do not come to our office until after the death. You do not register your will prior to your death.
Le acuerdo que los testamentos no van al registro a la oficina de registro, sino hasta que la persona fallece. Una vez la persona fallece, se presenta el testamento en la oficina de registro para empezar el proceso, ya sea de enforzar lo que usted haya dejado escrito. Acuérdese, por favor.
So lastly, remember, if it's not in writing, it doesn't count.
Acuérdense que si usted no dejó algo escrito, no cuenta. Sorry, I got some background noise here.
Yes. If they come to so many times we have grandkids, siblings saying that my mom or my dad said that this house is mine. I've been living here for 50 years, and he didn't put it in writing. So therefore, it cannot be honored. So we gotta take this very, very seriously. You gotta talk about it during Christmas dinner. Just at least get the conversation started.
Por favor, hagan un testamento, porque muchas veces se ve en la oficina de registro que un hijo o un hermano están diciendo, mi hermano o mi papá me dejó la casa, pero no está escrito. Si no está escrito, tiene que será a la merced de la corte lo que se decida con sus bienes. Por favor, hablen acerca de eso entre familia.
So we're going to talk about the probate process, and Attorney Sharon Wilson is going to take over that process, and that process will happen whether you have a will or you don't.
Whether you have a will or whether you don't have a will, you will come to the Register of Wills office if that person died in the city of Philadelphia. When you come,
después de un fallecimiento, la persona, un familiar va a venir al registro de wills tenga testamento o no.
Okay. When you come, you have to have a death certificate.
Cuando la persona llega a la oficina de registro, debe de tener certificado de defunción,
Identification for yourself,
la identificación de la persona sometiendo el acta de defunción.
if there's a will, you need the original will,
Si hay un testamento, se necesita el testamento original.
and if there's not a will, then you need the names and of all of the next of kin.
Si no hay un testamento, se necesitan todos los nombres de los familiares inmediatos, hijos, hermanos y padres.
So when you're there, particularly if there's not a will,
Cuando están en la oficina, especialmente si no hay un testamento,
all the persons that present a will or not at probate are sworn in.
toda la persona que estén presente cuando se haga enforzar el testamento o empezar el proceso de sucesión, todas esas personas que estén presentes van a ser juramentadas.
So it's important that the information is accurate, because to intentionally give false information is a crime.
Por eso es importante que la información que se brinda en ese momento sea una información correcta, porque si mienten en ese momento están cometiendo un crimen.
After you present your information and the fee for opening an estate,
Después que usted presente su información y el costo,
the office reviews your application and then awards you authority over the estate.
la oficina de registro verifica su información y una vez todo esté correcto, lo puede designar como la persona encargada de los bienes de las pertenencias del fallecido.
Okay, that's the general process.
Ese es el proceso general.
So some of the things why it's always important when somebody dies that has assets, it's particularly a home.
Una de las cosas que normalmente, uno de los problemas que normalmente surgen, principalmente son con las viviendas.
So probate and estate administration, it can help you stay in your home.
Empezando el plan de sucesión, le puede ayudar a que los familiares del fallecido se queden en la casa.
It can help you get homeowners insurance, which we need in the city with row houses.
Es importante porque los familiares del fallecido pueden inmediatamente obtener seguro de protección para la propiedad.
It can assist you into payment plans for utilities like water and sewage and real estate taxes.
Le autoriza al familiar que poder hacer acuerdos ya sea con PECO o con la compañía de gas o con la compañía del agua y también seguir el plan de sucesión de pagar los impuestos que deba la propiedad para prevenir de que la ciudad le vaya a quitar la propiedad.
You can get grants from the city for repairs or improvements to your house.
Pueden solicitar ayuda para poder reparar la propiedad, que es muy
Sell your
importante.
property.
Puede vender la propiedad también legalmente.
You can get a mortgage.
Pueden obtener una hipoteca.
And you can also work with the bank if it's still a mortgage or if the mortgage is in foreclosure.
Y si la propiedad tiene una hipoteca, eso le permite a usted trabajar con el banco, negociar con el banco para hacerse responsable de la deuda o seguir pagando la deuda que esté exigente.
So when you don't probate or you don't leave a will, here's what happens.
Cuando no hay un plan de sucesión o no hay un testamento, esto es lo que pasa.
It's called when somebody dies and they don't leave a will, the deed of the house is still in their name. the house or the deed becomes what they consider a tangled title.
Si eso pasa sobre una propiedad y el dueño de la propiedad fallece y hay un familiar viviendo en la propiedad, el título pasa a ser un título envuelto.
A tangled title is when a death has occurred in a chain of a title, and the title is still in the dead person's name. For instance, give them an example. You live in your grandmother's house. She died without a will, and the house is still in her name. That's a tangled title, and that's when you're going to start having some problems.
Un título envuelto consiste de cuando un familiar fallece y ya sea su hijo o su hermano vive en la propiedad y no dejó un testamento, ya eso se llama un título envuelto, en donde ahí empiezan los problemas.
When you don't properly probate your estate, you could eventually end up having problems with conducting business with that said property.
Cuando no hay un plan de sucesión, cuando no se inicia un plan de sucesión, todos estos pasos que hay que dar se complican y le puede causar problemas para poder seguir viviendo en la propiedad, al familiar que quede en la propiedad.
For instance, you can't get homeowners insurance because the deed is not in your name.
Por ejemplo, no puede solicitar seguro de propiedad porque la propiedad no está en su nombre.
You can't make payment plans with the city for your utilities and real estate because the deed is not in your name.
No puede hacer acuerdos de pago con la ciudad sobre un impuesto porque el título no está a su nombre.
You can't sell the property because the deed is not in your name.
No puede vender la propiedad porque el título no está a su nombre.
You cannot pass the house down to your children or to your family members or your heirs because the deed is not in your name.
No puede vender la propiedad, no se la puede regalar a otro familiar porque el título no está a su nombre.
You cannot get grants from the city of Philadelphia for home improvements because the deed is not in your name.
No puede solicitar ningún tipo de ayuda de programas sociales para mejorar de su propiedad porque el título no está a su nombre.
If the house still has a mortgage, you can't conduct mortgage with the mortgage company because the deed is not in your name.
Si el título no está en su nombre, tampoco puede negociar con los bancos si la propiedad tiene una hipoteca.
I also want to mention that not putting the deed in your name makes you very vulnerable if you live in a neighborhood with gentrification occurring.
Si el título no está en su nombre, también es vulnerable a que en parte de la ciudad, en sitios que hay gentrificación, en donde están remodelando, están haciendo nuevas construcciones.
Because you are living in a house that you don't own. And a developer can do the things that you did not do.
Porque legalmente usted está viviendo en una propiedad que usted no es dueño de ella. Y ya sea una compañía de construcción puede hacer la cosa, puede hacer los pasos, tomar los pasos legales para desalojarlo.
In terms of getting the deed changed or an estate raised for the dead person.
Pueden hacer lo que es conocido como un estate para el fallecido y tomar posesión de la propiedad debajo las leyes.
So we're still on the tangled titles because this is extremely important. State Rep, I want you to repeat this.
Yes,
if you are living in a house that you may consider heir property, which there's no such thing as that. I don't know where the word came from. It originated, I believe, down south. So if you are living in a house or property and it's not, and you I guess you assume that you owned it because you are the direct heir, but it's still in the dead person's name, you need to call us or call your office so we can begin to assist you in the process of opening up an estate so you can address it.
Si usted vive en una propiedad que era de su familiar y el título todavía no está a nombre suyo, por favor comuníquese con nuestra oficina para poder iniciar el proceso de empezar de que usted pueda hacer los pasos legales para poner el título a su nombre.
There are several legal agencies
Hay
that
varias organizaciones legales que ayudan.
Senior Law Project, Philadelphia VIP, Community Legal Services, Christian Legal Services. These are all agencies that will assist you in the beginning process of, and it's income, I think it's some income requirements. But if you're a low income and you fit those requirements, or a senior, they will assist you for free. If you have the money, you need to go see an attorney immediately.
Hay varias agencias que ayudan, agencias que son sin fines de lucro, como es las leyes de ancianos, la agencia de asuntos legales de la comunidad, VIP Legal Services, la agencia de asuntos legales de cristianos. Son agencias que ayudan gratuitamente a personas que son de bajo ingreso. Si usted vive en una propiedad que está a nombre de un ser querido que falleció, usted puede ir a un abogado y empezar el proceso.
The state rep has other agencies that are willing to assist you. Those are 5 off the top of my head. The Register of Wills have had several and numerous meetings with these agencies, and we are also coming to your assistance as well.
Hay varias agencias, el listado están en nuestras oficinas, se lo podemos hacer llegar.
To help people who cannot afford the cost of opening up a estate to fix a tangled title, I created the Probate Deferment Initiative.
Para ayudar personas que no tienen el dinero inmediato para poder empezar el proceso, la Oficina de Registro ha empezado un programa nuevo que está dispuesto a ayudarlo para que empiecen el proceso y el costo lo pueden pagar más adelante.
Under the Probate Deferment Initiative, the cost that the Register of Wills collects for opening up an estate will be deferred. We are deferring all those costs.
Para las personas que cualifiquen, estamos defiriendo los costos de iniciar el proceso de sucesión. O sea, iniciar el proceso que le puede otorgar a usted tener derechos sobre la propiedad de su ser querido fallecido.
Within the next couple of weeks, we will send you some information on the Probate Deferment Initiative. And this initiative, a lawyer from one of those agencies will have to review and take your case, and the process has to come through an attorney.
El proceso se puede hacer a través de un abogado, inmediatamente usted cualifique.
If an event, and the reason why we don't waive it is because we don't waive fees, we're going to defer it. So once, we're not looking to collect any of the probate fees from you until you decide to sell the property, and then that's when we would collect our fees.
Cuando usted decida vender la propiedad, en ese entonces la oficina de registro se va a cobrar el costo.
Sharon, what's a range estimate of how much probate fees cost?
I would say that generally in the neighborhood between $300 to $400, which, may not sound like a lot, but that's assuming you only have one estate to raise. Then if you have another estate to raise, now we're up to $800. If you waited for 3 people to die, now we're talking about $1,200. So it can get to be pretty expensive pretty quickly.
But the main thing is we want you all to, oh, you can translate that about the fees.
Normalmente los costos dependen del valor de la propiedad, pero algo específico normalmente es de $300 a $400. Para varias familias, eso es un costo muy fuerte y por eso la Madam de Registro ha iniciado este programa para que la persona se encargue primero de hacer los papeles legales, de otorgar los nombres correctos en los títulos para que el ciudadano pueda tomar una mejor decisión con su propiedad.
And remember, if you're in a neighborhood where the value of real property is increasing, maybe because of gentrification, then your probate fee will also increase because you pay based on value of property.
I said that already.
Okay.
Yes. And so that's one of my proud initiatives, aside from creating an outreach so you can get this information. But that's one of the initiatives that I'm proud to say that I have partnered with the legal community. And so we are deferring those fees for people who are low income. And like Sharon said, $400 may not sound like a lot to some people, but when you're talking about the house is in great-great-grandmother's name, so you're talking about estate, you got to keep opening them. And so it becomes a multiplier. And so what we're saying now is the market in Philadelphia housing is very, very hot. You do not want to lose your home simply because your deed is in a tangled title.
El mercado en Filadelfia está de bienes y raíces está bien importante, está subiendo y queremos hacer todo lo posible de que ustedes se queden en su casa, de que no pierdan la propiedad por asuntos técnicos o asuntos legales. Por eso este programa es uno de los programas que más orgullo se siente, tiene la Madam Registro, porque es para ayudar a nuestra familia que se queden en sus propiedades y que puedan seguir viviendo en su vecindario.
Anything else that you think is important on the tangled title, Sharon? Because I really, really want the listening audience, particularly the practitioners, to help me spread the word in the Philadelphia community about making sure that you try to get the deed in your name, and so you can conduct legal business with your family's assets.
I just want to reiterate that the agencies that you mentioned will provide an attorney at no cost to you.
Les queremos acordar que las agencias que acabamos de mencionar, si usted cualifica, le proveen un abogado gratuito.
And feel free, Tasha will put up our information. Feel free to go through the state rep office. Just begin to take care of your family, because this is your family's assets. It just was a mistake that was made, that they did not understand the importance of making a will.
Son errores que se cometieron al no tener un testamento. El tener un testamento ayuda a evitar errores para sus seres queridos. Por eso es la importancia de tener un testamento en el cual sea validado por sí mismo, que sea notarizado, que esté firmado por 2 testigos. Es muy importante para no dejarle inconveniente a sus familiares y de que su familia siga creciendo en el hogar que usted produció y ha trabajado tan duro. And just reminded everyone that it's important to have a will to avoid any headaches to your loved ones. and that your home that you work so hard for is protected by the people that you love.
Thank you. So inheritance tax. Attorney Wilson is going to give you a brief overall about what that entails, but I want to first say this. I have heard people say that, you know, they want to avoid probating their estate because they don't want to pay the inheritance taxes and just all kinds of excuses, not excuses, but I think they think these reasons are valid and they're not.
Impuestos sobre la herencia es algo que a veces la persona no lo quieren pagar por algunas razones, pero es importante conocer su derecho y el valor y el cobro que se le impondría.
So there is another part to probating a will. You got to pay the state taxes.
La otra parte de empezar el plan de sucesión es que hay que pagar los impuestos.
For instance, I'll tell you this. The city of Philadelphia sends $80 to $100 million every year to the state. Those inheritance taxes come from us. That's how really rich Philadelphia is. Please do not let people make you believe that our city is not worth a lot of generational wealth.
Nuestra ciudad le paga al estado de Pensilvania en impuestos sobre la herencia de 80 a 100 millones de dólares todos los años. No dejen que nadie le diga, no deje que nadie le diga que en la ciudad de Filadelfia hay dinero generacional.
Sharon is going to explain to you the inheritance tax, and we have all this information. You can email us. We'll send you all the information.
Tenemos toda esta información. Se la podemos enviar por correo electrónico. También está disponible en mi oficina en el 635 West Erie. Y ahora la señora Sharon Wilson va a explicar un poco sobre el impuesto sobre la herencia.
Okay, so inheritance tax. Whenever real property is transferred from one person to another person, there is a tax owed.
Cuando se le da una herencia de una persona a otra, hay un impuesto que se debe, que se llama el impuesto de herencia.
When you're living, that tax is called the realty transfer tax.
Cuando usted está vivo, ese impuesto se llama el impuesto sobre los bienes.
When you're deceased, the tax is called the inheritance tax.
Cuando usted fallece, el impuesto se llama impuesto de herencia.
All of the assets of the estate are added up, and then they are then subject to tax.
Todos los impuestos todos los bienes que el fallecido deja son sumados y después se le cobra el impuesto.
But the amount of tax you pay is based on your relationship to the person that died.
La cantidad del impuesto que se cobra es basado en la relación suya y de la persona que falleció.
Okay. So certain transfers pay no tax.
Alguna transferencia no pagan impuestos.
From a husband to a wife, for example.
De un esposo a una esposa.
From one child to another child. No
de
tax.
un hijo a otro hijo no se paga impuesto.
But if the transfer is from a deceased person to their children, the tax is 4.5%.
Pero si si la transferencia es de una persona, de un padre a un hijo, el impuesto es de 4.5%.
If the transfer is from the dead person to their brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews, brothers and sisters, the tax is 12%.
Si el impuesto es, si el fallecido le deja su bienes a un tío, a una tía, a un sobrino, a un hermano, el impuesto es de 12%.
If the deceased is giving it to a friend, the tax is 15%.
Si le está regalando algo a un desconocido, el impuesto sobre la herencia es 15%.
And if the deceased is making, if the deceased is giving it to a parent or a grandparent, the tax is 4.5%.
Si el impuesto es, si la persona que fallece le está dejando los bienes a un padre, a un abuelo, a un descendiente familiar, el impuesto es de 4.5%.
And if the deceased is giving it to charity, they don't have to pay any tax at all.
Y si usted le deja sus bienes a una organización sin fines de lucro, no hay impuesto.
Now, the register collects the money and sends it to Harrisburg.
La oficina de registro colecta el dinero y se lo envía a Harrisburg.
And if you don't pay the inheritance tax, it becomes a lien against the property.
Si no pagan el impuesto de herencia, se le puede hacer un lien a la propiedad.
It's one of the reasons that the register implemented the probate deferral program.
Es una de las razones por la cual la oficina de registro está implementando el plan de diferencia, el programa de deferir los pagos.
Because if you're trying to untangle a title, you have to pay your probate fees and the inheritance tax.
Porque si tratan de no pagar los impuestos, tienen que cobrarlo a un pago que son varios impuestos al mismo tiempo. El pago de transferencia y el pago de herencia, de bienes sobre herencia.
And so one of the things that I want to discuss with our legislator body is, possibly in some cases, will the state consider a moratorium? And that's something that we'll discuss later, State Rep. But just keep in mind the dynamics that we're talking about, because a lot of your constituents may have to open, 3 or 4 or 5, 6 estates. And, I always say this, and I know they say ignorance is no excuse. That's how the law is. But in this case, it's sad because I think it's our responsibility as a first-class city to educate our constituents and the citizens of Philadelphia of the importance of making wills, not just upon purchase of a house, but it should be implemented in a civics class or a financial literacy class, because for too long, you buy a house and that's not the first thing you think of, that maybe I should get a will. So just in case, and that's what wills are, not just in case, but now we're in a crisis. And
no, absolutely. And culturally, we, communities, minority communities, we need to get out of the bad habit that if you get a will, you're calling for death. It's something that's inevitable. We need to understand that it's going to happen to all of us at one given moment, and we need to prepare for the future, even after we're gone, and that's something that we're protecting our children, we're protecting our loved ones, and we're protecting our hard work, our legacy. Now I'm going to translate. Ah, es importante de que nos acostumbremos como comunidad a pensar en nuestra familia, qué va a ser de ellos una vez nosotros no estemos en este mundo. Es importante de empezar a crear su propio testamento para evitarle dolores de cabeza a nuestros familiares y proteger por lo que nosotros hemos trabajado en esta vida.
Yeah, and so this is something that, you know, it could be a signature for us here in Philly, because after all, you're still going to get the 80 to 100 million. But at some point, State Rep, we need to advocate so we can preserve these houses. Most of them are just the only thing they have, especially where we're in a homeless crisis right now. Homelessness
I'm
crisis.
committed to working with your office and my colleagues so that we can find a medium ground. If we have to do a moratorium, whatever that plan is, I'm more than ready, willing, and able to assist your office to get the help that our communities need.
So we're going to go over to the Orphans Court side of my job. And
Ahora vamos a hablar acerca de la corte de huérfanos.
so couples seeking to be married in the Philadelphia County must file for a marriage license at the Registry of Wills office.
Uno de los registros que tienen que buscar cuando hay un huérfano es los certificados de matrimonio en la oficina de registro.
They must come in together to file.
Tienen que ir juntos para solicitarla.
The applications for marriage must be made no longer than 6 months and no less than 3 days before the date of the marriage.
La aplicación de casamiento, de boda, debe ser solicitada no más antes de 3 meses de casarse o 6 meses después de haberse casado.
I want to talk about common law marriage real quick.
Quiero hablar de lo que es una boda de ley. Ley común.
This is a very sensitive subject.
Esto es un tema muy sensitivo.
But it's a subject to be had because the Register of Wills, we're keeping it real, and we also talking about the Constitution and the fact that we're a Commonwealth and what goes on and what's considered married or living together.
Y esto es muy importante porque la palabra correcta es matrimonios de concubinos, personas que viven juntos y se consideran que están casados. Es algo específico de lo que habla el Estado, de la ley del Estado.
There is no such thing as common law marriage in the state of Pennsylvania.
No existe la ley de concubino en el estado de Pensilvania.
I believe 1997 is when it was outlawed. Is that correct,
No,
Sharon?
that would be 2005.
Oh, 2005, yes, okay.
En el 2005 fue cuando lo consideraron ilegal.
So speak to that some, Sharon, to them, because I think it's important, yes.
Well, a common law marriage is a marriage that's recognized by the state, even though there's no marriage license.
La ley de concubino es una ley que en algunos estados es reconocido como una boda, es reconocido como un matrimonio, perdón.
And even if you didn't have a ceremony.
Y especialmente si no tiene un certificado o nunca hicieron una celebración oficial.
And as the register mentioned, however, there is no common law marriage after January 2nd, 2005.
Esa ley no existe en el estado de Pensilvania desde el 2005, desde diciembre del 2005.
In Pennsylvania, there is no common law marriage for same-sex couples.
No hay ningún matrimonio de concubino para ningún tipo de parejas aunque sean del mismo sexo.
There is no common law marriage for people who are already married.
No hay esa ley para personas que están casados tampoco.
There is no common law marriage for people under 18 years of old.
Tampoco existe para personas menores de 18 años.
Because you don't have a marriage license, you have to prove to the register that you are common law man and wife.
Porque no hay un registro, hay que probarle al Estado, al juez, de que ustedes son personas de matrimonio, que ustedes tienen un matrimonio.
It is a very difficult thing to prove.
Es algo muy difícil de probar.
The standard is very high.
El estándar es bien difícil.
But some examples that you may give to prove a common law marriage would be a joint tax return.
Algún ejemplo es los impuestos federales que estén sometidos por la pareja, por las dos personas.
A joint mortgage.
Deudas que estén, que los dos estén como garantes, perdón.
If you were named as the beneficiary on life insurance by the dead person.
Si la persona le asignó un seguro de vida.
Testimony from friends and family.
Testimonio de amigos y familiares.
Now, if you're successful in proving the common law marriage, then you have all of the benefits of a standard marriage.
Si eso es probado en corte, entonces usted tiene todos los beneficios de un matrimonio legal.
From what I've seen in my experience as an estate attorney at the Register of Wills, very few common law marriages have gotten through probate.
Muy pocas parejas que han considerado matrimonios de concubinos han sido aprobados.
I especially see people who want to be common law partners where one partner has already married someone else.
En algunas instancias se ha visto que legalmente una de las parejas que estén viviendo como concubinos están casados a otra persona o se han casado con otra persona.
And the register really doesn't have a lot of leeway around that situation. You just,
y la oficina de registro no puede usurpar la ley.
Right. So to the extent that you can gather all the information that you're able to.
Por eso es mejor que obtengan toda la información correcta.
And if possible, if you've been together for a long time, you might want to consider marriage.
Y si están viviendo como cóncubos, por favor, piensen en casarse.
One of the things the register did during COVID is allow for expedited marriage licenses.
Una de las cosas que el Departamento de Registro ha permitido es permitir licencias promovidas más pronto de lo normal.
Right, primarily because people needed health benefits and access to assets.
Principalmente porque las personas necesitan acceso a beneficios médicos y de bienes económicos.
So, guys and girls, after 2005, there's no such thing, and I come across a lot of girlfriends, and they are a lot of times in tears. Marriage is a business.
Es muy importante que que la persona que estén viviendo debajo del mismo techo, que se consideren marido y mujer o pareja, que por favor soliciten todo su derecho, soliciten su matrimonio legal para evitar inconvenientes en el futuro.
And you need to consider that. And you need to educate your men and women, your girls and guys. It really, I know, when we think of marriage, it's such a wonderful ceremony and the white dress and all that. Yes. It's beautiful.
Es las ceremonias son muy bonitas, pero lo más importante es proteger sus derechos.
And Register, I've seen this situation where two people consider themselves common law married.
Se han visto situaciones que se consideran marido y mujer o pareja.
But at the death of the husband, the wife that was never divorced comes back and controls the estate.
Y cuando la persona fallece, la pareja que estaba casado legalmente es la que viene y se adueña de todo lo que haga.
And there are lots of tears, just like she said.
Y ahí sí hay muchos llantos.
Yeah. So we also have a marriage record department, and a lot of people come, as I said before, for genealogical research. They can come there. And also people have to come and get certified copies of marriage records to obtain insurance, real ID, and some immigration processes. We maintain those records.
Le acordamos que pueden ir al departamento de registro a solicitar copias de registro de matrimonio.
So we are all open by appointment only. Much of the stuff you can request online. Tasha will put up all our information. Please like our social media pages on Facebook. PHLROW.
La oficina de registro está en todas las redes sociales. Tienen su página de Facebook, Philadelphia Office of Wills, of Register of Wills.
And for the first time, guys, when you go on our website at phila.gov/wills, it's also it's in you can push a button and it's translated in Spanish as well for the first time in its history.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you, Madam Register.
Yes.
La página web, que esto es muy importante, la página web de la oficina de registro también está traducida en español, que todo lo que hemos hablado aquí esta noche están escrito en la página de web de registro de Filadelfia.
So like our page on Twitter. And
por favor, denle un like a la página de registro de
it's PHLROW. And we just put up our hours. I had webinars that will explain. This is so wonderful. I want to cry that you actually translated our whole.
Madam Register,
I don't know if this is history or not, but it's history of the Register of Wills.
Most importantly, it's us making government work. It's making sure that our communities understand their rights and their privileges, and that we are here to work for them, not the other way around. Madam Register, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to assist you in doing this program, this presentation in Spanish. I look forward to doing it not just for the 197th Legislative District, but anytime that our schedule permits, that you need my assistance or my office, we're here ready, willing, and able to assist you and all of our constituency. So thank you for all of your great work.
You're welcome. I also wanted to acknowledge Attorney Terry Booker. She was the one that led the probate deferment initiative. She took the lead from the beginning to its end. She's been working at the Register of Wills, and she's one of the attorneys that I retained. I'm excited for the possibilities of my tenure at the Register of Wills. I'm just enthusiastic about helping people understand the importance of protecting their generational wealth. Our forefathers worked so hard. A lot of immigrants have came over from a lot of war-torn countries, and
yep.
You buy your one house and you love your house, and I love my house, and we just have to become more financially literate and just simply just make a will. Let's spread that word. So I want to ask you for a Christmas present. Mom, what do you want for Christmas? Give me a certificate to this attorney so I can make a will, so I can protect my and your generational wealth. I'd rather have a will than those Prada boots. I like Prada boots, but the will is more valuable.
Madam Register, thank you so much for the opportunity to educate our community. For your staff has been phenomenal, not just preparing this program, but in helping us with other issues that pop up every week. Gracias a todos por participar. Esperamos que esto le haya sido de mucha información, y si necesitan más asistencia, por favor no duden en visitarnos en el 635 West Erie o en el departamento de registros en el centro de la ciudad, en el City Hall, en el salón 414. Thank you, Madam Registry. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good
Bye-bye.
evening. Bye.